Every morning, you are handed something that most people throw away before they even realize they had it. The first hour of your day, that quiet window before the noise of the world rushes in, before your phone starts pulling you in 17 directions, before other people's priorities begin colonizing your mind. What you do in that first hour, what you think, what you feel, what you decide, sets the emotional and psychological tone for everything that follows, and most people waste it completely. They reach for their phone before their eyes are fully open. They drown their first conscious moments in news, in notifications, in other people's highlight reels. And then they wonder why they feel scattered, anxious, reactive, and behind before the day has even properly begun. I made a decision a long time ago to treat my mornings differently. Not perfectly, I'm not selling you a fantasy routine, but intentionally, purposefully, with the understanding that how I start determines how I go. And everything changed when I made that shift. Not overnight, but steadily, undeniably, in ways I felt before I could even fully explain them. So before I go any further, I want to ask you something real. What does your morning actually look like right now, the first 20 minutes after you wake up? Be completely honest with yourself. Because what you do in those first 20 minutes is one of the most accurate indicators of the direction your life is heading. Drop your answer in the comments below. I genuinely want to know, and I read every single one. Now let's get into this. The morning is not just the beginning of a day, it is the beginning of a version of you. Every time you wake up, there is a brief, fleeting moment. Neuroscientists call it the hypnopompic state, where your brain is transitioning from sleep to full wakefulness, and your subconscious mind is unusually open and impressionable. Your critical filters haven't fully engaged yet. Your habitual thought patterns haven't locked in. In that window, you are more receptive to suggestion, to intention, to emotional tone than at almost any other point in your waking hours. What you feed your mind in that window matters more than most people understand. If you fill it with anxiety-inducing news and social media comparison, you are literally programming your nervous system for stress before the day has started. If you fill it with intention, with clarity, with the right kind of thought, you program it for something entirely different. This is not mysticism. This is neuroscience. The reticular activating system in your brain, the network responsible for filtering what you pay attention to, is primed by what you focus on first thing in the morning. When you consciously set your attention on your goals, your values, and your purpose at the start of the day, you are literally instructing your brain to notice opportunities, solutions, and information that are relevant to those things throughout the hours that follow. You are tuning the instrument before the performance. And most people never tune the instrument at all. They just pick it up mid-chaos and wonder why everything sounds off. I want you to think about the person you are trying to become. Not the idealized fantasy version, but the genuinely better, more capable, more focused, more grounded version of yourself that you know is possible. That person has habits. That person has a relationship with their mornings. That person does not start the day in reactive mode, letting the external world dictate their internal state. That person starts with intention. And the reason I want you to watch something like this every morning is not because I think you need to be lectured daily. It's because we all need consistent reminders of who we're trying to be. The world is relentlessly good at pulling you back toward who you used to be, toward comfort and drift and the path of least resistance. You need an equally consistent counter force. The research on habit formation is unambiguous on this point. Consistency beats intensity every single time. You don't need one massive motivational event per year. You need small, daily, intentional inputs that keep your compass pointed in the right direction. Watching something that reminds you of your values and your goals every morning is one of the simplest, most effective versions of that daily recalibration. It takes minutes, and it compounds into months and years of psychological momentum. But let me push this further, because I don't just want to talk about watching a video in the morning. I want to talk about what that video should activate in you, because the point is never passive consumption. The point is ignition. When I say watch this every morning, I mean let it light something in you. Let it remind you of the stakes. Let it bring you back to the awareness that your time is finite, your potential is real, and the gap between where you are and where you want to be is closed one morning at a time. Here's a fact that I find both sobering and motivating in equal measure. The average person in the modern world makes approximately 35,000 decisions per day. Most of those decisions are made unconsciously, driven by habit, emotion, and environmental cues rather than deliberate thought. The morning is your opportunity to get ahead of that unconscious machinery, to prime your mind with the values and intentions that you want, guiding those thousands of micro decisions before they happen. When you start your day with clarity about who you are and what you're building, that clarity permeates your choices in ways you often won't even consciously notice. You'll make slightly better decisions about your time. You'll be slightly more resilient when difficulties arise. You'll be slightly less reactive when someone or something tries to throw you off course. And those slight improvements, repeated every single day, produce results that look like transformation from the outside. I want to talk about mornings and identity because I think this is the piece that most morning routine advice completely misses. The routines, the habits, the rituals, those are tools. But the real engine underneath all of it is identity. Specifically, the story you tell yourself about who you are. Because here's what I've learned and what the psychological literature consistently supports. People do not rise to the level of their goals. They fall to the level of their identity. If your internal self-concept does not include the version of you that wakes up with discipline and intention, then no morning routine will stick no matter how many times you try to implement one. You'll white-knuckle it for a week and slide back to default because default is what feels like you. The solution to this is to use your mornings deliberately, repeatedly, to rehearse a new identity, to think, feel, and act like the person you are becoming, even before the evidence fully supports it. This is not delusion. This is how identity change actually works. You act your way into a new way of being. You show up for your morning routine not because you feel like it, but because the person you are choosing to become shows up for it. And over time, through repetition, through consistency, through the accumulation of small kept promises to yourself, that identity solidifies. It stops being something you're trying to do and starts being something you simply are. Every morning is a vote for that identity. Every time you choose your development over your comfort first thing in the day, you are casting a vote for the person you want to become. And you don't need a unanimous vote, you just need a majority. You just need to choose well more often than you don't. That's the actual standard, not perfection direction. Now I want to address the most common objection I hear to intentional mornings, and it's this: I don't have time. I have kids, I have a job, I have responsibilities, I barely have time to brush my teeth. And I hear that. I genuinely do. Life is demanding, and the demands are not evenly distributed. But I want to challenge the framing, because what I've found in my own experience and in observing the lives of people who are genuinely winning is that it's never really about time. It's about priority. And the reason I know this is that almost everyone who says they don't have time in the morning has found at least 20 minutes for their phone. I'm not saying that as judgment. I'm saying it as an honest observation that points to something important. When something matters to us enough, we find the minutes. So the question isn't whether you have time. The question is whether you have decided that you matter enough to spend the first part of your waking hours on yourself. Even 10 minutes changes things. 10 minutes of reading something that expands your mind. 10 minutes of sitting in silence and consciously setting your intention for the day. 10 minutes of physical movement that tells your body it's time to be alert and alive. 10 minutes of this, of any content that reminds you who you're trying to become, instead of 10 minutes of scrolling through content designed to capture your attention and monetize your distraction. The difference in cumulative effect over a year is staggering. Let me be direct about something else. The morning routine isn't the point. Discipline isn't the point. The point is your life, the actual life you want to be living, the actual person you want to see in the mirror, the actual impact you want to have, the actual freedom you want to experience. The morning is just where it starts. Because the person who consistently chooses growth in the morning, who consistently shows up for themselves before showing up for the noise of the world, who consistently primes their mind with purpose and clarity before filling it with everyone else's agenda, that person is systematically building a different life. Not because they are luckier or more talented or more special, but because they understand that the internal landscape creates the external results, because they have decided to take ownership of the one thing they have complete control over, how they begin. I also want to say this because I think it matters. The morning is one of the few times in the day when the world hasn't asked anything of you yet. The emails haven't arrived. The demands haven't landed. The conversations haven't happened. It belongs entirely and completely to you. And what you do with that undisturbed window, whether you invest it in your growth or surrender it to your phone, is one of the clearest expressions of how much you value yourself. Not in the self-indulgent sense, in the deepest sense, in the sense of, do you believe your development is worth protecting? Do you believe the person you're becoming deserves the first and best of your energy? Because I believe you deserve that. And I think if you're honest with yourself, you believe it too. You just need to act like it. Here's what I know from experience. The version of you that watches something like this every morning, that starts each day with intentional input rather than reactive scrolling, that begins each day by reminding themselves of their values and their direction, that version of you shows up differently everywhere, in your work, in your relationships, in the way you handle difficulty, in the way you think about what's possible. The morning is a multiplier. Get it right, and everything downstream benefits. Let it drift, and the drift compounds just as reliably as the intention does. So I'm going to ask you to do one thing, just one. Tomorrow morning, before you open a single app, before you check a single message, before you let the world in, spend 10 minutes on yourself. Watch this again. Sit with the ideas. Write down one thing you're committed to today. One. And then go build it. That's how it starts. Not with a perfect system, not with a transformation overnight, with one morning chosen deliberately, and then another, and then another. The shock comes later when people look at your life and ask what changed, and you'll know the answer. It started in the morning. Drop a comment right now and tell me, what is the single most important thing you want to build or change in your life this year? Let me know. I want to hear it.